Okay, great. Hi everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Ellen Walter. If for some reason those folks on the online can't hear, just send a little message in the chat box. So we're here today. This is the first of, we hope, many DC based. So I represent IRC in the US. And with my colleague Lauren, and we're excited to bring you. This is for those that are online. If you're located in the DC or in the US somewhere, you might be eating lunch as well. But this is a little kind of lunch and learn here around, and an opportunity to share some of this online as well. So. IRC, for those that don't know, is 50 this year, which is very exciting. And so we are hosting a whole series of learning events throughout this year here in the US, specifically in Washington, D.C., to get to know other partners and to talk a little bit about IRC's work, but really more focused on the different systems work that others are also doing within the sector. So an opportunity for there to be kind of cross-learning and sharing. I have just a couple of brief slides, and then I'll introduce our presenter, and then we'll have some discussion after the fact. So a lot of these, if you know IRC's work at all, a lot of these are things you've seen before. The big circle diagram is what the system looks like. It's all of the different actors and factors all kind of working together, but the idea is that they're all pointing in the same direction, and that's really around the partnerships and collaboration. IRC views themselves as the connector between them, which is the diagram on the right, really serving in that kind of hub and coordination role in a lot of the places and countries in which we are located. And then the last is a little diagram about our approach. So looking at the diagnostic, looking at what the vision is at a very localized level, testing some solutions, seeing what's working within the system, and then working to scale that up, all while involving the people that are needed to make that system function. So the next slide I have is the building blocks. For those that have been at all involved in systems work, there are building blocks that range from 5 to 13. IRC has chosen 9. These are our 9. For anyone involved in Agenda for Change, there are 8. The idea is that there are some essential elements that are needed to make the system function. So things like policy and legislation, planning, institutional frameworks and capacity, finance, infrastructure, regulation, monitoring, water resource management. And then we think that there's this opportunity for constant learning and adapting. And because we feel like that's such an essential piece, we've added that specifically as a building block that we're working on. So as a little bit of an introduction into the way that we're looking at measuring the system, and since this webinar is about, and this brown bag is about around monitoring, we look at it through the how, the what, and the why. And so looking at system strengthening and being able to measure the actual strength of the system, but then also looking at all of the subsystems and the actors and the behaviors and everything involved in that. Also looking at what's happening at the national and subnational level around service and service delivery around their national monitoring systems, and then ultimately looking at the impacts. So on that note, that's just a very brief introduction, and on that note, I'm going to introduce our presenter, who's way more exciting and interesting than I am. Well, yeah, I think so. So one second, before I do that, we have 2 upcoming events for those that are in the room. We're holding a trivia night here, so getting a little bit outside the box. And so, yep, so trivia night will be at the end of this month. And then our next of our series of events will be on May 9th. We'll have a webinar with the Global Hand Washing Partnership about systems approaches to hygiene. So now, going to our, to introduce our presenter. Antonio is a senior water and sanitation specialist with the World Bank. He's worked over 15 years in the wash sector for NGOs, the European Commission, UNICEF, the World Bank, and he leads the mapping and monitoring team of the Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Network with Ellen Greggio of WaterAid. He's part of the Global Solutions Group for the Rural Water Supply and Sanitation at the World Bank, and he's the team leader for CSR. And we end on that because that's what he's here to talk to us about today. So thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us today and look forward to having you talk.
Okay. May I stand up?
Yes, please.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. For me, it's an honor to be. When Eileen reached out to me and asked me to present this initiative, the Rural Water Supply and Information System, the SIASAR, she only referred a BBL series. I didn't know it was the 50th anniversary of IRC, which I've been following since I am a water and sanitation practitioner a long time ago. So for me, it's an honor to be here. And I'll try to walk you through the CSR as an example of harmonization. You know? And also, there's another important, on a personal note, I've been living in DC for almost 4 years now. And I think that's the first time that I really connect with the NGO community here in DC. I've been working with Brian and other people, but I mean, working at the World Bank, you are always traveling. For me, it's good to know you all. So thank you for having me here.
Speak up a little for the
Yeah, I have a problem with my voice tone.
Okay.
So I'll try to speak louder, and I'll try to speak slow because I have also an accent that might not be understood. So, okay, we are here talking about promoting harmonization, and so just as an example of how much harmonization is needed, I prepare my presentation the other way around. I'm going to talk about the why, and then the what, and then the how. So it's just an example of every people that think on a framework and a building block, etc. We are thinking in different ways and different things. So being at the Global Solution Group at the World Bank has given me an opportunity to work in different regions, but also with the NGOs. I started in Tanzania with Engineering Without Borders, working in rural water and sanitation, and I've been visiting different regions and different countries. And most lately, I've been working in Latin America, starting Central America. And something that you discover as you visit different countries, different realities, and different contexts, is that at the end of the day, we cannot celebrate life using the same colors. Yeah? So there is 2 ways to approach all these monitoring things, etc. One is focusing on the differences, and in any country that you try to implement any of the building blocks, any of the model, they will say, no, that wouldn't work in my country, we are different because of this, this, and this. So the other way around is focusing really on the commonalities. And I think that's what we have been trying to do since we started back in 2010 in Central America. So and one of the commonalities that we found across the globe, in all the countries, is precisely the challenges that we are facing in the rural water and sanitation context or subsector. We also always find low coverage level, especially when compared to the urban sector, poor service quality, limit sustainability, how many times you arrive 2 years, 1 year after a system is built and is already collapsed. And most importantly, there is no actual information. We're still working on national average where we try to solve the problem of the village. And this is in part due to inadequate information system. Those systems that started like 2000 was the third wave of information system. There is still a lot of information systems split in different organizations, different institutions. In some countries you find 3 or 4 institutions tracking the same with different methods. What is true is that most of them, they are not adequate. They require capacity they don't have. And that leads to a situation where the decision, the priorities, and the intervention that are planned are not really based on evidence. So let me start about a little bit on the how and the what. I want you to look at this graph because this is one of the core the conceptual model of the SIASAR. When we started developing the system, we came up to the conclusion, and I will refer to that in the principle, that any information system to be useful should be simple, easy to understand, not only by sector people or sector institutions, but also by the institutions that are making decisions, like the Ministry of Finance. I mean, anybody that do not know what is a pipe, no, should understand. So that's what we came up with this ABC performance index. In fact, to be honest, we have to say that this method is inspired in a metric that were developed in Honduras in a previous system that Honduras developed with support from USAID. And basically they use ABCD to understand the situation. So here you have the functionality curve or the survival curve of a water system. On the left axis, vertical axis, you have the functionality level. And on the bottom, you have the timeline. So whenever you build a system, a water system, the system is fully functional. It's brand new, it's working, there's no problem. So that's what we call level A. It's providing the service of water. But the functionality of the system, when it's standard working, evolves over time. So they will go through different stages. So we try to identify those stages, but in a simple way. So we classify the status B is when the system has some problem, but the local community, the rural community, is able to solve this problem, is able to address this problem. No? For instance, a valve is leaking, they can change it to a pipe. So if the community solves the problem, the system will go back to level A, so it continues working. Sometimes the problem exceeds the capacity of the community, and it's going to level C. But we call level C when the community requires external support to solve the problem. It might be either financial or technical support. For instance, the pump is burned, they need an electrical engineer, they maybe don't have money to substitute the pump, so that's status C. And again, if external assistance is provided, then they will have the system back to level A and continue. And status D is when there is no system or the system is already collapsed. So all the infrastructure or the investment needs to be kind of done again. And that's quite important for us because we say that there is no sustainable system. But the system can be sustained over time. So by definition, all the system will collapse, all the system will broke, or will reach the end of the lifespan. But what we can do with the adequate operation and maintenance is to sustain the service functioning over time. So that's important concept, the ABCD. And then the what. So what is the CSR monitoring? No? We divide it into 4 core entities. One of the problems we identified in informal water system is that they combine these entities. Sometimes the system, the service provider, and the community itself, they are kind of joined in a monitoring system. So you have situations like it happens in Honduras, for instance. They will only track the water services when there is water system. So they will not collect information of those communities that do not have a water system. Why? Because they need the responsibility of the service of the technical assistant provider was to make sure that the systems are working. So you left behind all the other community where in fact there is no service. So what we do in CSR is we kind of divide and collect differentiated information about the infrastructure, about the service provider or the community water board, and about the community itself. And then you combine in many different ways that you find in the reality. In some communities, you find 5 water systems managed by one community water board, or maybe you find a water system that serves 2 communities. So there's different combinations in reality. So by differentiating the entities, you might then integrate it and really understand what's happening at the community. And we also identified another important entity, which is the technical assistant provider. That might be an NGO providing assistance to a community. That might be the national or the regional authority that needs to make sure that technical assistance is provided to this community. So it's important also to track the performance. For each of these entities, we collect through different forms. We collect different information, and then we kind of try to understand what's happening with this entity and how it's contributing to the sustainability of the service. So this is basically, very quickly, how the information is collected and processed. So the national team or local team will collect information for each single community. They will visit each single community and collect information on the system, on the service provider, on the community, etc. When the information is collected, there will be a data review and validation process. Normally, it's implemented by the authority responsible for the service. So to make sure that the data that is finally published is validated by the authority. There is different ways to do that. And then there is the data analysis and a report, yes, and the system generates some reports that are aids for decision making. No? Behind the system, there is roles, not only conceptual model, but also roles IT platform, with the CMS, business intelligence, geodashboard, etc. And this, and we try to keep it updated and to be more and more useful. Huh? So this is very quickly, as I said, there is 4 core entities. So the conceptual model, gather information in 4 questionnaires, 1 for each entity. Then this basic data is composed into indicator, indexes, and then we come up with a composite index, which is the WSP, Water Sanitation Performance Index. Let me give you briefly an example of that. So you visit a community and we got information on all of them. And what the composite index tries to capture is whether this water and sanitation service is provided in a sustainable way in that community. So we're going to capture information, generate information about the water service level, the sanitation service level, the state of the infrastructure, the service provision, technical assistance provision, and community, all composed from the basic data from the questionnaire. So in this case, this is a community in Northeast Brazil, in the municipality of Soracti. We collect the information and we get the result. So the service itself is in status B. No, it means that they're facing problem, but the community can kind of address this problem. But there is an important thing here is that I think we sometimes we do not manage to explain well. Is that it's important to understand how the composite index is generated. But when it's generated at the end of the day, especially for the sector institution and the sector official, composite index do not tell much. I mean, it's a B. So the thing is, but okay, it's a B. Now what do I have to do? Yeah. So the most important part is then deconstruct the index. So with the information we collected, as I said, we start building some basic data and then some indicators, and then we come up with the index, which is composed of the 6. But to understand what you have to do, you need to go back to not to the basic data, but the first kind of layer of indicators to understand what to do. For instance, here in this village, the water system infrastructure was in status B. I mean, it was recently constructed. Everything was working fine. There was some problem with the storage tank that the community can address it. And there is some problem with the water source. The catchment area was not protected, so it's a matter of just placing a fence. So that this is fine. Regarding service level, we find a problem with quality, water quality, and especially with physical and chemical parameters that were not meeting the standard. So that's the more important part. I mean, when you have the status, you go back and say, okay, in this community, the thing we need to solve is this problem with water quality. So that's important. Other example of other index is the sanitation and hygiene service level, which in fact was overall fine. The SIASAR also captured specific information on the school and health center, and you will have sanitation and water in the school, so sanitation and water in health center. In this case, even though the composite index is big, you will find some parameter like the service level in a school of sanitation, which is required technical assistance, there's some toilets that are not working, etc. And in the health center also they do not have water supply, the water supply was broken, so they need some repair. And the other index is service provision. When they have some problem status in the organization, they don't have a legal status, specific the problem, they cannot receive subsidies or finance because they do not have established legal status. And here this is the problem I'm going to refer later, which is with the technical assistance provision that you might see was very weak, no? And that would be the case in most of the cases. We have institutions of organizations that are supposed to provide the technical assistance that in fact lack the institutional capacity, lack the resources, and sometimes like even and they're not covering all the community that should be covered. So communities that require technical assistance, they are not assisted. Yeah, so that's kind of the way what we are monitoring and how we are kind of composing and decomposing the index to understand what to do in a certain community. At the end of the day, the CSR is focused in sustaining the service functioning in the communities. And the whole idea is by routine monitoring, you will have data and you will know what to do in that community to come back. This is just an update of the information collected in CSR so far. We have 26,000 over 26,000 communities in 11 countries in Latin America. Those communities are housed of 13.5 million people, and this is 33% of all the rural population in Latin America. So this is also just to refer about the kind of data set we are talking about. We have 20,000 water systems and 17,000 water providers. No? So that's what kind of allows us to make some kind of analysis within the. And it's important, of all these 20,000 water systems, only 80% is in A. Yeah? On the service provider, only 2% of the service providers are in A. Yeah. So the other is, they are trying to survive, they require systems that are not provided, etc. No? But one of the things is, and that's another interesting thing, when we're talking about information systems, you find many information systems all around, all across institutions, all across countries, and some of them, when you ask, but what do you do with information? And they say, well, we have a database, and yeah, we collect information, and yeah, we have it here. Okay, when was the last time? 5 years ago. What are you doing with this information? Nothing. So that's another important thing. I mean, what to do when we have all this information? And in fact, something that we always say is that a data that does not trigger any decision should not be collected at all. Because you are investing money and sometimes in a recurrent way and wasting money all around. No? So that's quite important. In CSR, we have been in the CSR community. We are always thinking about how we are going to use this information, what is meaningful for the different decision-making processes. That's quite important. We're always open to hear from other experiences to improve that. So the first thing we start doing, that's from a few years ago, but we start trying to understand what this data is telling us. Remember, we have some database. So the first thing we found is that, yeah, somehow the water system, I mean, first is astonishing, I mean, the figure about sustainability. I mean, only 8% of the services provided in the rural communities were kind of sustainable, only 8%. Then you have 30% where the community is kind of managing the problem. This 30% is always trying to catch up to the A status, or maybe they are dangerous to go down to the C status, etc. No? Together, there is, let's say, 40% of the services are kind of sustainable or be sustained on the ground. But you have 60% that are not sustainable, of which 40 require technical assistance. That's quite important. The other striking fact for me is that when you see the distribution of the composite index, no? How all the indices integrate into a community, and the service provider, we found a stronger correlation between the sustainability of the service provider and the service itself. So when we are talking about technical assistance, we're still thinking of fixing the pipe, fixing the valve, training the plumber. But it's not about the plumber, it's not about the system, it's about the service provider. We need to fix the institution. We need to fix the service provider. We need to have them be sustainable, being able to repair the system. And if you see the system distribution, this is an important figure. I mean, 60 plus 20 is around 80% of the system are status A or B. That, for me, that's talk about the fact that over the past decade, there has been a strong technical assistance program, training plumbers and training institutions to fix the infrastructure. And I think we have kind of globally done right, and the community themselves, they are kind of able to keep the system running, the infrastructure. No? So the big challenge is with the service provider. And that's important because this is telling us that we are required to promote technical assistance programs, national program, beyond the project cycle. We need to kind of have this organization working. The other striking fact is that the technical assistance providers, those institutions that are supposed to support the rural communities, the rural water board, they require technical assistance. I mean, only around 28% they are kind of A or B. The bulk of them, over 60% of the technical assistance providers, do not have capacity, resources, the right equipment, etc.
That's like district level people in the country.
That includes district level people, that includes national institutions providing direct technical assistance, that includes some of the NGOs that are helping to sustain this service at the community level. So that's another important focus. We require technical assistance for the service provider, but we don't have the right technical assistance mechanism in place. That's another important fact. So another striking fact that we came from this preliminary funding is a shift in the paradigm. We were using, and that's happening now with the shift from the Millennium Development Goal to the SDGs. No? We were thinking we have around 60, 70% or 80% of the community with improved water. When we shift from tracking access or improve access to really sustainable services, what we find out is completely the other way around. So this is a shocking figure. We are not tracking the right parameter. We are not monitoring right. We are saying that there is access when there is no access. There is no sustainable access. So that's called for a kind of a complete different view on how.
Is that sort of a shift from MDGs to SDGs?
No, it's that is in fact that is data from 2015, and that is what the GMP data was telling us. In that case, we were tracking data from 4 countries, and that's what the average GMP figure will tell us about the country. And that is what the SIASAR.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is the GMP data basically MDG data?
Yeah.
Okay, so
the one on the left,
the one on the left is effectively MDG, and yours is basically SDG.
And this is basically data collected for each community on the ground through the CSR.
So it's much closer to SDG.
Yeah, it's much closer to SDG now.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, we are like 95% aligned with the SDG parameter. Yeah. We're still analyzing how to fix that. But yeah, we are collecting data not only about the access, but how the system is sustainable. Yeah, well, with all this data, for sure you have the possibility to start doing some research, etc. We found some interesting figure. We start analyzing the relationship between the legal status of the service provider and the sustainability of the services. We start asking questions about gender, for instance. They always said having women in the workforce and the community workforce, there is a relationship with the sustainability. So we start exploring all these political economy questions, or maybe we start comparing the operation and maintenance costs with the investment that I've made. So we still kind of data mining and having all these conclusions. But it's important to understand also these parameters to design your intervention. So this is just an example of CSR, what we call CSR in practice, uses that has been done to CSR. There are many countries, there are 11 countries now. One of the examples that I like the most is the example in the Dominican Republic. In Dominican Republic, the WEPAR, which is the rural unit of the institution that is responsible for the water service, in fact, there was almost non-existent. There was forgotten in a quarter of the institution, and then the president decided to join the SIASAR because of a political commitment. And then they came back to the country. The president of the INAPA told them, "Okay, let's implement SIASAR, but we don't have cars. We have no way to go, etc." So they were providing cars and instruments to start going to the communities. When they went to the community, initially they went just to collect data on CSR. Why? Because the institution made that decision. But they found not only data, but they have found some claims and requests from the communities. And through this exercise with own resources, they kind of found, in this case, up to date, there are 37 systems that were in status C or D that has been kind of recovered, and now they are functioning. Some of them have problems with the pumps, so they send an electrical engineer to solve it and done. Some of them have problems with the water quality and the chlorination system. So that's kind of, I think this is the best example because I see the CSR as a tool not only to plan investment, which is most of the institutions think the first, how do I plan my investment for the country the next year, but it's an important tool to kind of promote sustainability and make sure that the system keeps running, no? Well, this is just a few samples. I think I'm going to go quickly through them because we have not much time. This is a very interesting thing when we supported the Ministry of Health in Panama to collect data on indigenous communities around the coast, and we have a comparative analysis of the status of the water services in those indigenous communities as compared to the national average. So where we found also very important gaps in how those communities are receiving service or not. And also that call for the differentiated approach you need to follow if you want to address really the status or solve the status of the services in those communities. This is the sample I gave before. So let me just give you a quick overview of lesson learned from implementation. The first thing is back in 2010 when we started supporting the development of the system. In fact, what happened is we have two projects, one in Panama and one in Nicaragua. There was rural project, and they have the traditional component of the baseline, at the beginning, and then collect the data at the end and just measure the impact. No? So we thought, why don't we try to kind of come up with something more solid and an information system. So they collect the data, but at least they keep the data because most of the time all this paper is wasted and the information is never used again. But then we kind of explore and assess many different systems that were kind of around, and something that we decided to go through a new one is to have kind of a common principle that I think has been key to around all this year to have this system kind of successfully implemented. When we started, we never planned to reach 11 countries. We were just meaning to have a system for Panama and Nicaragua. But as of today, we found out there is a huge gap in information in all the countries. When the countries started seeing the system, they kind of demand, we want that, and that has led kind of an impressive expansion, no? But we agree in some principles. The first principle is keep it simple. And that's something that is important. I mean, this as simple as possible. You need the information, but you don't need much information. We even found some information system that collected information about the color of the pan. And we say, why do you want the color of the pan? I mean, what's the decision I want to make? The other key principle was to have it institutionalized. That's quite important. The only way to have a system is having this, like the official system for the country. Then all the donors, all the NGOs, all the institutions align to that system because it's the governmental system. The other key principle is transparency and open. So all the data, once the data is validated, should be open and available to all the stakeholders. Harmonized, which is the kind of the thing that gathered us together here, that's also important. I mean, if you wanna, it's not about comparing or benchmarking who is the best. It's about being able to identify who is doing better and who is doing right, and where are the lessons learned that I can kind of bring from one country or from one community to another. So that's important. It's quite important that we are kind of collecting the same information in the same way, so we are able to compare and identify those things. For sure, the system needs to be adapted and flexible. Each country has its own kind of characteristics, so we need to make sure that they are kind of captured. And the other principle that is still one of the biggest challenges in SIASAR is keep it modern. No? I mean, nowadays technology changes everything 6 months, so it's kind of difficult to keep it catching up. But we're kind of doing fine. It's a software-free, no license development where the country has contributed to the development of the system through their own IT staff. The other thing which is important is that the process matters. And I was in December in Kyrgyzstan, and Kyrgyzstan decided to join the SIASAR with kind of helping them through the roadmap. But the thing is, when they saw, we were able even to have the system tested in Russia on the same visit on the ground, and they were quite excited. So they wanted to start right away, no? We said, no, hold away. There is like a process. You need to think through the different roles. Which are the institutions involved in that? Who's going to collect information? Who's going to validate the information? Why do you want to implement the system? How are you going to use it? What decision are you going to make? So, and then, are you going to start with a pilot? Are you going to start nationwide at scale? So there is a whole process that is quite important, and working through this process is quite important. In the case of SIASAR, we started, as I said, back in 2010. We promoted the participation of the countries, so the sector official from the different sector institutions were from the very beginning thinking through which are the questions, which are the data we need, which are the indicators, all this stuff. So they have been engaged through all this process. And the community has been growing. So it's not just a platform, IT platform, it's a whole community, you know, and some of you that have been able to participate in the SIASAR will realize that there's more and more people. And in the process, it's important to involve not only the different countries. This is when Peru joined the system. Right? This is the Minister of Peru, and this is the President of AI in Costa Rica. I mean, this level of minister that have been signing agreement. But also, it's important to keep like stakeholders and donors and community involved, so we are all on the same boat. As I referred before, the implementation roadmap is important. Being able to ask yourself and respond all these questions before you start implementing a system. Institutionalization, that's just an example of what, as I refer, I mean, it needs to be official. So it's the minister like saying this is the system and everybody aligned. When the minister call the World Bank and call the ADB and call the ACID and tell, this is the system I want. Wow, there's no way you can change the decision. So that was one of the key factors, no, for the donors to align and not coming up with a different system. In the case of Latin America, and this is under review, under reflection, we established, we have then established like coordination committees at regional level, etc. Now that we are going global, we're thinking we don't want the United Nations of the CSR. We need to think different ways to reorganize the thinking and the coordination, but we cannot gather, all the countries in one room once a year. As I said, different institutions, donors, NGOs, counterpart. Something important is that the system is never complete. When you think it's complete, there is new challenges. Sometimes challenges has to do with the context of a new country coming in. Sometimes challenges has to do with the change in the IT technology, and then you need to adapt, or there is a powerful tool that you want to bring into the system. So being able to evolve is important. And also it's quite important, like helping through the process to the national team in the different countries and make sure that they keep engaged, etc. That's taking a lot of time. Just very briefly, some challenges we have. I will refer only to, yes. I think the main challenge when we talk about information system is the baseline mindset. What do I call the baseline mindset? Every country will have a baseline. And when you want a baseline, you want to collect all the information possible. But then when you think of better on a routine data collection, periodically updated, then there is a lot of information that you don't need. But still there is this mindset there that we need to kind of change. For the CSR, for sure, tackling the language barrier has been important. What we developed is like a dictionary of terms when we have harmonized concept. And then for each language, even in some countries for different language, we have how do you refer to this. So now it's a multilingual platform with, in some countries they have developed even the question in indigenous people languages, when it's writing, etc. No? There are conceptual challenges, like if we go to Kyrgyzstan, just very quickly an anecdote, I was trying to score the sanitation at the health center, and then I went to this sanitation facility, and I realized there was no hand washing facility there. There was no bucket for hand washing, no? So I said, okay, this is bad, you don't have water. But then you will realize if you put a bucket of water beside the sanitation facility, the water will be frozen, so there is ice. So why do you need a bucket 50 meters from the sanitation facility? You need to kind of think continually how to about that. No? Well, now we are thinking there is some demand because the system has been expanding. We have demand from Mozambique, we have demand from Kyrgyzstan, different countries. For sure, this is a huge challenge going global. And then the way to organize it is something we are thinking through. The way to have it kind of in all the multiple languages, but still harmonized is important. So keep it evolvable and modern, adapt, etc. So that's something that if you have any idea, we're pretty open. Let me just finish with telling something more that we are trying to do. And so because of the relevance of this, because of the relevance of having harmonized metric, and even that has been an evolution in the thinking of CSR. The very first few years we were thinking on the platform, on the system. But then we realized which is more important is in fact the metrics. How we are tracking the sustainability of the different entities. So we came up with the idea of kind of splitting both, they are integrated in the CSR, but splitting the thinking. And we always say, okay, if the country or have already an information system that is up and running and providing information in a sustainable way and periodically updated. So why do you want to change the system? You don't want to change the system. What you want is that the system provide the right information. So now we started to think about the global rural water supply metrics. We have the last year at the World Bank we started the work of identifying what should be the indicators. The minimum core of indicator that every system should have data for to be able to kind of track the sustainability. We identify this is the paper I distributed, presented like this set. It's still a draft, we're gonna have a structured discussion through the Rural Water Network, and I hope most of you already are members of the Rural Water Network, but just in case, some information over here. We plan to launch the structured discussion in March, April, and the whole idea is precisely that: is can we come up, the whole community, can we come up with a harmonized set of indicators that we believe they are the right one to track the sustainability? For sure, you then can collect information of many other parameters, but if we were able to kind of agree on what information should be collected, we will be able to align all the initiatives to have this data and then promote more sustainability of the service. So I hope you can also participate in that discussion. And I leave it here. I'm open for question and answer.
Great. Great, thank you so much, Antonio. So we have maybe 10 minutes or so for some questions, but just so that people don't think your questions won't be answered, hopefully Antonio will agree that we'll collect all the questions after the fact that don't get answered and ask for some of that to be answered and then sent around when we send the link to the webinar, the materials that were just handed out, and any other relevant information. So if we can take maybe 2 questions from the room, and then we'll take 1 or 2 from online, and then go from there. So any questions from the folks in the room? And I'm probably going to repeat your question just in case it's not heard. Yes.
So I have a ton of questions about how this works, but this one is a little more about the context. Out of your work, have you, in the US there's something called the Index of Leading Economic Indicators that gives you an idea of what's going to happen. Have you, out of all of this work, come up with any sort of indicators of how robust a system is? In other words, these are effectively static indicators, and over time you're tracking them, so you have an idea, and you're very clear that you want sustainability. But I'm sort of stepping back from all of that work. Have you learned things in all the countries where you've worked where you could walk into a system, into a country or a district and say, well, if it has women running this, or if it has these other features, I'm pretty sure this is going to still be here in 5 years, or if it doesn't have that, I don't think it's as sustainable.
Great. So we'll do one. Did folks online hear that question? I think so. Lewis was pretty loud into the microphone. Let's take one other question. Chris.
I want to go back to Lewis's comment about the alignment with the SDGs. And I was kind of disappointed when you handed out the RWSN piece because that gets more confused and kind of further away from the SDGs. But you said that CSR was about 95% aligned with the SDGs. Has that been a conscious effort that you're trying to help input into that process? And when do we get the last 5%?
95%.
So for those that were online, I'm not sure if everyone heard, but the question was about alignment with the SDGs and whether or not that was a conscious effort to align. And if it's 95%, where's that last 5%? And then we're going to go to 2 questions from on. There are no questions online. So if there's one more question from anyone in the room, Ron?
So I'd like to ask about the adoption of CSR. Is this something that the World Bank will intentionally be doing with every project? It's a water project. And you talked about some of the different countries, but maybe you could just summarize what countries have adopted it as their national approach, which ones are considering that. So just a summary of what we can expect for adoption of CSR.
Great. All right, Brian, you get, we have two more questions in the room. We're gonna go with these 2 questions, and then we're gonna take, we're running out of our time, but we'll ask these 2 questions, and for those online, if you can stick for a couple of extra minutes, that's great. If not, it's being recorded. So Brian and then Amelia, and then we'll finish out.
So my question was just on kind of what sort of frequency you're seeing data updates on. You talked a little bit about routine monitoring. It's something that everyone struggles with. So just curious what success CSR has had.
So that question, for those that couldn't hear Brian, was about the success of CSR and what kind of frequency. Amelia.
Mine is a little bit follow-up on Ron's, just about the indicators, and if are all countries using the same ones, or are they slightly different? I mean, you talked about the example of the frozen hand wire station, so that will obviously influence, you know, they get a lower grade, but there are circumstances where the indicators don't necessarily apply.
So Ron had a question about indicators and adoption in which countries was it being adopted, and Amelia's follow-up was around the indicators themselves and whether or not there's an adjustment of the indicators based on the situation. So we are going to turn it back to you, Antonio, to provide some responses for this, but if there's any leftover questions either online or in the room, we'll collect them and we'll follow up afterwards.
Okay, so thank you. I'll try to address your questions. In some of the questions, we have more like thought there is a process, that an answer. Regarding the question Luis posed about the economic indicator, we in fact kind of the composite index, it gives you an idea of how robust is the service provided in the community, and there is still some thinking, but very incipient thinking, of even being able to kind of track the credit worthiness of utility, rural utility, Let's say, is it worth to invest or not, in public or even private? And but they're still thinking about how to we can map that better. For the timing, what we really focus it is in being able to understand the factors that trigger or enable sustainability, and try to address that. I always, one of the research we're doing is about identifying those factors that happen at the transition of the different status. And I always give an example. When you buy a car, you know that after 5,000 kilometers, you need to go to the workshop, and they know what they have to do. I mean, they check the oil, etc. No? So one of the ideas is if we are able to identify those factors, we will be able to do preventive operation and maintenance for the system and not having system collapse. But yes, this idea is we are still thinking about it. There's not any conclusion, but I think it's very interesting.
No, think hard, because it's that's sort of the secret sauce, right? I mean, even preventive maintenance is something that we don't see very often.
Yeah.
And if it turns out that having a preventive maintenance program is an indicator of better system sustainability, maybe you have 4 or 5 of those things that you say, these are the ones that we come in, and if these things are happening, we're pretty sure that this system is robust. Because that puts a dynamic element into it, which would be amazing.
No, thank you, because that's an interesting thing to think about it, and this incipient thinking, but we don't have any conclusion on that. Then of the SDG, last year in Ivory Coast, I presented this presentation, similar one, and I prepared a graph with all the data in Nicaragua. In Nicaragua, we have data collected of almost all the rural communities in the countries. You can visit in the website. So we tried to see how aligned are we with the SDGs. And it was very interesting because we presented the GMP team with a slide with the graph they are preparing using data from the SIASAR, and they were like, oh, we need to think about it. And we have had several sessions with them, and they participated in Colombia this past year in the SIASAR assembly. And they like a few things. The first thinking we have is, well, the GMP will never use this kind of system as the data source because they need consistency across the globe. So in the CSR now there is 11 countries, but the different degrees of data collection and quality in terms of the scope of the country. So they will keep using household surveys and census information. But that's one thing. The other thing is, in any case, if we have interesting data that they can use to focus on a specific problem and support the evidence they are having, that we'd be happy to include that. So the effort we were making, and we have also an assessment on what is missing for CSR to be 100% aligned to we made the effort, we have a report of that. And there is some information, like for instance, we were for the access to the water point, we were having like 100 meters distance as a perimeter. The ESDG is having half an hour walk. So these kind of things. And yeah, there is still some few indicators that we are not collecting data, which is affordability and all this stuff. Something that we do is to make sure that the data of the communities, the administrative division is the official one used by the Institute of Statistics in every country. So that will allow to cross data from different sources and then have this kind of analysis instead of having to collect all the data again in the SIASAR. But yes, there is this kind of 5% that is missing, but we're not sure we're gonna do that because in fact there is the CSR serves to a different purpose of the GMP. The GMP you want to have a snapshot of what we are. In the CSR you want to keep the system running to focus more on sustainability. So we decided with discussing with them that we should keep the focus on that. We should not be like the database for the GMP, I mean for the SDG, but rather focus on having these sustainability factors.
Still, like the SDG should learn from you guys instead of the other way around.
Well, I would not dare to say that. I think we all like kind of learning how we're gonna go about the SDGs. I don't think there is still. In fact, the MDG never solved the issue of the water quality. How to track that. So we all need to come with that. That's what's important to come with harmonized way to look at this. All the stakeholders. And yeah, we should all be contributing to be more.
Yeah, because it's a very, very timely issue because a lot of countries are starting to program toward the SDGs, but without that sort of set of indicators, that's a hard one to program. And you kind of got those. They can be almost an informal getting ready for the SDGs, if not a JMP.
So it'd be hard to imagine if you did really well on the scale, not meeting the SDGs.
As long
where
as
there's
the
a lot of
definitions
issues
are
that,
right.
yeah,
As long as the definitions are consistent.
Then that's linked to the question, to Ron's question about the adoption of CSR. Well, up to date, there is 11 countries in Latin America that have adopted the CSR. This is starting by, in some countries there are regions and not the whole country, but in Mexico, we have Honduras, we have Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, we have Colombia, we have Peru, we have Brazil, and Bolivia. And I don't know if I'm missing any of them. There is different degrees. In Nicaragua, they have collected the whole country, data from the whole country. In fact, they have updated the baseline twice. They do the baseline approach, that's fine. In other countries, don't. What I would always say is, yeah, having a baseline of the whole country is useful, why not? But I don't think that's a requirement. I mean, as soon as you start using data that help you improve the services, start where you can. I mean, if you have a program in, let's say, 40 municipalities, well, focus on that. I mean, the thing is have the information used, no? And the other thing we always advise, and the advice is not always taken, but is that data collection should be kind of embedded in the routine technical assistance mechanism. You should not just hire 100 consultants to collect the data. You just embed the data collection in the activities that the people visiting the community does every time it goes, no? So there is different degrees. Each country take a different approach. Some of them they start piloting a certain province or region. Some of them they want to do it as can. So still, well, there is a challenge there. And going global, what I said before, yeah, the bank, I think there has been, the thinking of the CSR has been evolving within the World Bank too. As I said at the beginning, we were never aiming to have like the global system for water, for rural water. It was just like, to serve the client better in Panama and Nicaragua. But I think we always been surprised also by the success. And now we have 11 countries, so there is a responsibility there. And we have demand from different countries in different regions. I mean, the countries themselves, they are presenting the initiative in global and regional forums, and there is claim. No?
In private sector, you call that being market driven.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, and that's what I would say. I mean, at the beginning, when we were 2 countries, 3 countries, in fact, I was more like a marketing about the CSR to see where it's spanned. After we have like 5 countries, including Peru, I said, no. I only go on demand. So I need to have a request from the minister of the country to kind of start going to a country to kind of market. I don't want to market anymore. So the evolution after that has been really on demand. I mean, and that's what we are doing. I think CSR up to date has been a demand driven. So the country has been get to know about the initiative. They claim that. But lately we have, there is a new thinking in the bank on what is aligned with what Ron was saying. Say, wow, but if this is working for 11 countries, let's see whether this is working to scale globally, no? And it's working to scale globally. Let's include it in all the work operation. Let's try to promote that. So that we're willing with the other work. Are we sure that the core indicator of CSR are the right one? Are we sure that they adapt to contexts like where 60% of the service is provided for hand pump? Because in Latin America are more water skiing than hand pump. So we are going now through this thinking of, can we just make sure that this is the right set of indicator? And if this is the right set of indicator, let's go to promote that. Then how are we going to do that? If a country has no system at all, no information system at all, then welcome to CSR, it's free. I mean, you have to put some resources in place, but you can use it. No, we can help you use it. If a country has already an information system, you have different scenarios. The system is updated, it's running, etc. Yeah, you make sure you have the right information in the system or adapt it and keep it running. And let's use just the conceptual model to extract like the reporting, all the uses, all this stuff, which is the more important part of the system. But if the system is not updated, it's not working, let's go through the roadmap and understand whether it's worth keeping the system or changing to another one. On the frequency of the update, I think that I partially addressed the question. That depends on the context. I would not ask a country to update the baseline every year. I mean, I think you need to focus first on the purpose, why you need this information. Are you going to use it? Then it's worth updating the information. And then on the indicators, to Emilia, yes, very quickly on the indicator. What we do a reflection process, and all the indicators are the same for all the countries. So when a country wants to propose a new indicator, an adjustment to indicator, then we give them time to present evidence that the indicator needs to be adjusted. It might be because of the context, as I referred to the Kyrgyzstan, etc. Then all the countries will review that, and if it is agreed, we will adjust the indicator. But all the indicators keep harmonized. Sorry.
So thank you. Thank you for those online who stuck it out to the end, and thanks for everyone in the room. We really appreciate you coming down and look forward to seeing you at future events. Lauren and or someone, probably Lauren, will be sending follow-up with all of the recording. But if there's any outstanding questions or anything, we'll make sure that those also get answered, and also send links to the materials that were handed out as well. So thanks again. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. All right, take care.
Thank you.